Hey, I'm your host, Sean Provenche, and welcome to this episode of Real Estate Business Explained. Today, I want to continue along a conversation that we've had over the past few episodes surrounding personal growth and mentorship and just having an idea of where you are and where you want to go in terms of being the best version of yourself that you can be. And I alluded to this last week, and what I said was that we were going to work through how to put together a plan for your growth journey, like how you can actually map out and structure you moving from where you are right now to who you want to be, what you want your life to look like, and what you want to develop yourself towards. So I want to start this with a bit of a story about my personal life, because I had an experience where it really became clear to me just how important this was. And the experience was actually related to me building my business and eventually selling it. I had a great business. I was running my business with my business partner, my brother, and we'd been in business for 15 years. It was consistent. We were doing anywhere from $1 million to $1.5 million a year in gross commissions. We experimented with all kinds of stuff, but where we really settled out was what I call the Ninja Squad. It was like a small group, me and him being the ones who did the majority of the business. And we had anywhere from 1 to 4 buyer's agents at any given time, usually 2 or 3. That was kind of our sweet spot, was around 3. And we were super profitable because we were writing a lot of deals, but we didn't work crazy hours because we had great administrators, and any clients that looked like they were going to take a lot of our time, we just passed off to someone on our team who wanted the opportunity. And it was a great business. I ran that business that way for probably about 6 or 7 years. And, along the way, we had different iterations. We had growth phase in the beginning, the middle phase where we were experimenting, and then we settled in. In 6 or 7 years, we were just running that business. And it was great. I was working 25, 30 hours most weeks. I was well paid. I was comfortable. I was bored out of my mind. It was a great little business, but I wasn't being challenged. I wasn't growing as a person. And so when I talk about creating a growth plan, I'll share with you that I tell this story because there's a lot of people out there who would look at that business and say, that's a great thing. But for me, because I wasn't feeling challenged, because I wasn't, having stuff put on me that forced me to figure out solutions and get creative and move projects forward, I was bored. And I've got this weird concept that just drives me crazy and keeps me up at night, that you only get one shot at life. Different people have different perspectives. There's all kinds of great spiritual alignments you can have, and I don't want to get into that, but almost everyone unanimously agrees that chances are you're not going to have another shot at living the exact same, like we don't get a redo, right? So with this theory, what I realized was like I wasn't living my life the way that I wanted to because I wasn't growing in the way that I wanted to. And there was a whole, ball of yarn that came with the decision. But one of the fundamental things that I realized I needed was to go and do something new. I needed to be doing something different. I didn't want to do the same role for another 15 or 20 years, even though I would have made a ton of money, and it was easy for me. It was fun. It was straightforward. So I knew that I needed to do something. And that was what kind of led me to making the choice to arrange a buyout with my partner and help him take over the business, and going and starting Endgame and, building all this stuff that was way more work. And in the short term, not nearly the same amount that I would have kept if I just kept selling houses in terms of like financial, pay. But what it did give me was that new challenge, that opportunity for growth. I had to go and search for something. And with that whole, like, you only get one shot thing, what I've come to realize is and I'm sorry, I'm going to swear, but I've come to realize that my perspective has shifted from being, I want to be safe and I want to get financially what I need, and I'll trade that in exchange for, doing something I think is mundane or something that I just don't enjoy anymore, or I just am finding repetitive and I already know it, to fuck someday. I see all these people who live their life, and I did this for years, saying that when their team does a certain thing, they'll start, living better. We'll book the vacation when the money comes in. I'll take more time off when I have a personal assistant, or when the buyer's agents are moving, we'll be able to be profitable. I ran my business with this kind of stuff for years. How about this one? I'll prioritize my health and I'll start eating better when I have more time. You're never going to have time. Saying you're going to do something someday is as stupid as saying, well, I don't know of an analogy, but just like I had this experience where I shifted my perspective to, fuck that. I'm not going to do something someday. I'm going to start living my life better right now. And this was a huge game changer for me, because what I realized was I was willing to take risks. I would be willing to take the risk that I'm going to do something and it's going to blow up, or I'm going to walk away from something that's super profitable in exchange for having the unknown and making that part of my life. I'm going to go out and exercise on a daily basis. I'm going to prioritize eating healthy, because even if it takes me away from my other priorities, like my job and my work, for half an hour or an hour or 2 hours every single day, I know that for me, the life that I want to live involves me being healthy and living a really long time. I'm not going to wait for something to happen for me to be able to do that. So the question I want you to ask yourself when we talk about planning personal growth, and we think about you starting to develop yourself towards your ultimate version of yourself, well, what does that someday person look like to you? What does that best life look like to you? And I hope that we can start putting some pieces in place right now, that you're not waiting for something to happen. It's not going to happen someday. It's going to start happening right now. So before we get into the nuts and bolts of how I would start to structure, and I've got a download that we're happy to share with everyone and all kinds of stuff for building out a growth plan. Before we get to that though, what I want you to do is we shared all these goal categories on our last episode, and you can go back and check them out. They're in the blog and all that kind of stuff. But there's different categories like spirituality, health, relationships, work-life balance, wealth building, professional. There's all these different categories at which you can look at what's showing up in your life and what would make it better. What I want you to do is I want you to just put some thought into what your best life would look like. If you're the ultimate version of yourself, what are you doing professionally? What are you spending your time doing? What's your wealth building avenue? What does that side of your life look like? How much have you saved? How are you facilitating that? What are your relationships like with your spouse, your children, your friends, your loved ones, whoever? It doesn't matter. What are the relationships you have in your life? What are they bringing to you? What are you bringing to them? What's the value? Your spirituality, your health. I mean, you don't take care of this body, you truly have nowhere to live. You got to take care of yourself, right? So you need to look at what your ideal, if you were living your best life, what would you look like? Would you have the six-pack? Would you have would it be the bankroll? Would you have really great intimate relationships, and the other stuff is less important? And then also, what passions do you want to make room for? Chances are there's something on your someday list that you plan to get to, and you would make it a priority to get to that and involve that when the money's right, the time's available, you're grown, or whatever it is. So what passions do you want to make room for down the road, 2, 3 years, 5 years down the road? Okay. What would you wish that you mastered so you could teach someone else to do it? That's an interesting question, because you might not think about one of those things as something that you need to prioritize now. But if there's something you want to teach your kids, or something that you want to give back to your community, or the local school, or donate at the library, if there's something that you want to be able to teach and mentor on, well, chances are that right now is probably the best time, other than yesterday, that you could start pouring some energy into that. So what are those things? Who else would you want to teach and nurture? So ask yourself the same question, but about the people in your life, the kids, your nephews, your family. It could be a brother or a sister or a sibling, or you could teach your parents. We tend to think linear, like downward, but it could be all kinds of people. So who would you want to share something with? How could you start doing things now that would move you towards being able to do that for them later? And again, what I'm hoping is that you can step back from that and say, I'm not going to wait for someday. again, I apologize, but fuck someday. I'm going to start doing little things now. So I just want to be clear that when I say this, I'm not saying to toss responsibility aside. I'm not saying sell your house, buy a boat, and go live in the Gulf of Mexico and try to figure out a new career because you've always wanted to dip your toes in the ocean every morning. I'm not saying toss everything that you've worked so hard for aside. But what I'm saying is there are little pieces, little gratuities you can give yourself. There are little investments that you can make right now in your time and financially, or in your personal growth plan that you can build in that can move you closer to being there. So what does your someday need to look like? And get rid of it being someday. Make it part of your journey now, because that's what's going to actually make it happen. Okay? So let's get practical. So hopefully this spurred some thought. Maybe you wrote a whole bunch of stuff down and you've been thinking about things that you want to do, people you want to spend more time with, people that you want to give more to, things that you want to give to people in general. Or maybe you're thinking about things that you want to be capable of professionally, what roles you want to fill eventually, what you want to spend your time doing. Well, you need to backwards analyze this and put some thought into what you need to grow into being in order to do those things. So I'll take professional, for example. Let's say that you have a small business, but you really want to scale it up. You love the challenge and you want to figure out how to actually take your business and 10x it. Well, usually leadership's going to be a big part of that. You need to think about what kind of role you want to fill within your business. Are you still going to be actively trading? Or are you going to be the person who is just mentoring and leading the group or making key decisions? Are you going to be the entrepreneurial leader who sets the vision and then you find people and place them in various roles so that they can go forward and actually execute the plan? What are the things that you need to learn, develop, and build as a skill? Because you can read a book, but if you don't practice and make it part of your process with people and embrace it, it's not going to become something that's innate. It's not going to become something that you unconsciously just know how to do. It's going to be something that feels like work. These things take time. So again, think about who that 3-year or 5-year person needs to be. And then my goal is that you take that and you start to map it out backwards. If you need to develop your skills in leadership, well, what books do you want to read? What courses do you need to take right now and maybe again next year and the year after? What people should you have mentoring you? Either someone you can network with and do an information exchange, or a mastermind group that you might join. What groups should you prioritize traveling to be a part of? What circles do you want to be part of in terms of like a community or a network of people? Who do you want to have coaching you? And think about topics, like the topics that you want to learn about, but also I'll say like categories of ways that you can learn, like traveling for training and attending seminars, masterminds to join, coaches and mentors who you want to hire, but then also the categories that you want to learn in. So again, it's not just your business and your personal life, it's your wealth, your spiritual, your health, your goals, and just start mapping stuff out. And the way that I look at it is I recommend starting further out. So think about who you want to be in 5 or 10 years. But then ask yourself, if I'm going to be doing that in 5 or 10 years, who do I need to become in 3 years to be on track for that? Don't feel like 3 years, if you're going for 5, it's not going to be halfway, because things tend to hockey stick. They start small, they bubble, and then they grow really quickly and exponentially because you've built that foundation over time. But if you're going to be that person in 5 years, well, what are the building blocks? What is that foundation? What does that need to look like? And then again, what do you need to do right now? What do you need to learn this year, this quarter, next year? And if you download the sheet or you reach out to us when we get that to you, you'll be able to map it out. It's gridded in a way that it has both a personal side and a professional side. And then in that, they've got year 1, 2, and 3. So again, I would start with year 3. Start by thinking even further out, but start writing down things that you know you need to accomplish or prioritize or have started to build in year 3, and then work backwards from there. You'll find that it's a lot easier this way, because you can look at year 3 and say, well, crap, if I'm going to be doing that in year 3, I've got to have blank in place by then. So start to fill it backwards. And the stuff that I will I'll say my experience, the stuff that I find comes out when I take this process is completely different from what I would have guessed it would have been if I had just started to write stuff. So take some time. And when you do this, do it in a space where you're undistracted. You're not on your email or also returning socials. Take some time and just kind of piece it out and break it down into really simple chunks, but spend a minute before you start thinking about you, what makes you happy, what makes you fulfilled, and don't just make it business. We talked about this last week, I'm going to say it again. If you just focus on business, you're going to have a lopsided approach and you're going to be highly likely to burn out. Find things that fuel your fire on your personal side as well. So with this, the last thing I want to leave you with, and I know this is a quick one, but I don't like to try to fill material. I just want this to be a quick instructional how you do this. The last one that I want to leave you with is have fun with this. Okay, this is going to feel like you could sit down and just write out all these huge things that could overwhelm you and frankly are going to take the excitement out of this, but this should be fun. Learning is fun. Being part of groups is fun. Make it aspirational. These are goals. This isn't a list of tasks or jobs. This is something that you get to set and say like, oh man, in 3 years, I would love to be part of this group or this network, and I want to travel to meet these people. And here's what I can do now that I piece that down and it starts moving me there. I'm just going to get little bite-sized pieces along my way. So make it fun, make it rewarding. If you don't like jogging or doing cardio, go join a kickboxing club or a salsa exercise dance club or something. Just find little ways that you can start moving in the direction that you need to be and layer enjoyment into it because it's going to keep you coming back. Okay? I hope that you take me up on this. And if you do, I'd love to take a look at it. So reach out to us if you create this plan and we'll connect with you. I'd love to see what you come up with. Send it to me. I'll send you some thoughts and we can just bounce it back and forth. If you are looking for any resources, again, reach out to us. We're pretty easy to find. And otherwise, I'm grateful that you took 17 minutes just to hang out with me. And I hope that you jump in again on the next one. We'll see you soon. Thanks for listening.